The Briar House was the kind of restaurant where even the water glasses looked expensive. White linen, dark wood, low lamps, and servers who moved as quietly as nurses during rounds. The long table beside the fireplace had been arranged with printed place cards, polished silverware, and a small vase of white roses at every fourth setting. My mother chose it for her and my father's 40th anniversary because, in her words, 40 years deserved something memorable. Lauren handled the reservation. For a party our size, the restaurant required a deposit, a final guest list, and each entree selection 48 hours in advance. She texted everyone twice about allergies, steak temperatures, and whether the children wanted mashed potatoes or fries. She even corrected me when I first said Eli might decide at the restaurant. They need everything finalized, she had written. So when dinner arrived, it came with ceremony. Every plate matched a name card. Every child had been counted, measured, and planned for. That was what made Eli's empty place impossible to dismiss as an accident. A ribeye for Molly, my 9-year-old niece. Another for Ben, who was 6 and mostly survived on crackers. Lobster for Scott. Salmon for my mother. Prime rib for my father. Then the server reached Eli. She checked the empty space before him. Then the printed card beside his water glass. I'm sorry, she said, I don't have an entree listed for him. Lauren kept cutting Molly's steak. Oh, that's right. Eli's picky. He can have bread. She pushed the basket toward him as if solving a minor inconvenience. My mother studied her salmon. My father unfolded his napkin and said, without looking at me, you should have brought something for him, Mara. Eli touched the basket but did not take a roll. Is the bread free? He asked. He was 8 years old. He should have been asking for extra butter. Instead, he was checking whether hunger had a price. Something inside me became very still. At St. Anne's, stillness was useful. It came before a child's oxygen dropped and everyone looked toward the person expected to know what to do. I had learned not to confuse calm with surrender. I smiled at the server. Could he have the ribeye? Medium, with mashed potatoes? Lauren laughed once. Mara, that's $120 steak. And the large chocolate cake, I said. Eli looked at me as if I had performed a trick. Separate check, just his and mine. The table changed temperature. My mother leaned closer, her voice soft. You'll still help Scott with the main bill, won't you? Your father is retired. For years, every family dinner had been called Dad's treat. Then the check would arrive. My father would touch his jacket as if surprised to find no wallet. And my mother would mention prescriptions or property taxes. The bill always traveled until it reached me. Sometimes Scott paid part of it. Sometimes he discovered his card was in another pair of pants. Eli's steak arrived before I answered. The server placed it before him with a seriousness I appreciated. Go ahead, I said. I stood because sitting had begun to feel dishonest. I'm paying for what Eli and I ordered. Nothing else. As of tonight, the family bank is closed. Lauren's knife stopped against her plate. My father looked wounded. My mother looked administrative, as though I had changed a policy without approval. No one apologized to Eli. He ate carefully at first. Then with the appetite of a child who had spent half an hour pretending not to be hungry. I drank my coffee slowly. When the check came, I paid cash, tipped well, and took my son home. Halfway there, Eli asked, was the steak really expensive? It was dinner, I said. You were supposed to have dinner. He nodded. At home. He disappeared into his room and returned carrying the ceramic pig he had painted in 2nd grade. He set it between us. You can use this, he said, for the meat. The next morning, I woke to 11 missed calls. Under the kitchen trash, folded into quarters, I found the permission slip for Eli's class trip. The class trip cost $28. That was less than I spent on coffee during night shifts. But Eli had hidden the form as carefully as an eviction notice. When I asked why, he shrugged. We're saving money now. Children rarely invent fear from nothing. They collect it from rooms where adults believe they are not listening. I signed the form, placed the money in an envelope, and wrote his teacher's name across the front. You don't have to pay me back, I said. Eli gave me the polite nod children use when they do not believe the adult speaking. I had spent most of my life being the reliable one. At St. Anne's, that was an asset. I worked nights as a respiratory therapist in pediatric intensive care, where panic could fill a room faster than smoke. My job was to notice what others missed, the shallow breath, the change in color, the parent whose questions had become too quiet. At home, reliability meant something else. I had steady employment, picked up holiday shifts, completed forms, answered midnight calls, and absorbed crises without making them visible. Eli's father left when Eli was 2. He moved farther away, called less often, and eventually became a name attached to regular birthday cards. For years, my parents helped fill the gaps. My mother picked Eli up when school closed early. My father stayed when a sitter canceled. During winter surges, they were the people I could call without explanation. That help had been real. So was the invoice attached to it. 4 years earlier, my father underwent bypass surgery. I slept beside his bed and translated the doctor's explanations for my mother. After he came home, I began sending my parents $400 a month for medications and household expenses. No one asked me to continue forever. No one suggested I stop. 3 years earlier, my mother met me in a hospital hallway with papers for Lauren's SUV. She said my signature was a formality. Lauren and Scott needed a reliable vehicle for the children, and my credit would lower the rate. For the first 2 years, Lauren paid on time. That became proof, in my mother's mind, that asking me had been reasonable. I was capable of saying no. I refused Scott's business idea, my parents' porch repairs, and a family lake trip I could not afford. But every refusal had consequences. My mother stopped speaking to me. Lauren forgot to include Eli in a birthday outing. My father called to say the tension was affecting his blood pressure. Once, after I declined to cover a hotel bill, my mother canceled on watching Eli 2 hours before my shift. I found another sitter, arrived late, and received my first written warning in 11 years. After that, the monthly transfer felt less like support and more like a maintenance fee. I paid because peace seemed cheaper than disruption. That was the arithmetic I understood. The house on Sycamore Street represented another kind. It was a pale blue bungalow 6 minutes from Eli's school, with a narrow porch and an old maple leaning over the backyard. The kitchen was small, the floors needed work, and one bedroom had an east-facing window filled with morning light. Eli stood there and began planning. "My bed can go there," he said, "and the telescope by the window, if we get one someday." I had saved $31,000 through night differentials, holiday shifts, second-hand furniture, and vacations we never took. Every sacrifice pointed toward a place where Eli would not have to listen for disappointment before asking for something. Dana Keene, the loan officer, reviewed my pay stubs, bank statements, employment history, and planned down payment. "On paper, this looks strong," she said, "but it's preliminary. Once you submit the full application, we pull all 3 credit reports and send everything to underwriting." I knew I had never missed a payment. I mistook that for knowing what was in my name. 2 weeks after the anniversary dinner, Dana called after 7. "I have the credit report," she said. "There are 2 things we need to discuss right away." Part 3, 2 black marks. Dana's office sat above a pharmacy in a brick building that had once been a bank. The old vault door was still visible behind the reception desk, painted white and used as decoration. I noticed it because I needed something ordinary to look at while Dana turned her monitor toward me. "I want to separate these," she said. "They're both serious, but they're not the same problem." The first account was the SUV loan I had co-signed for Lauren 3 years earlier. It was 30 days past due. Not 90, not in repossession, but late enough to damage the credit history I had spent my adult life protecting. The lender reported the missed payment last week. Dana said, "If Lauren brings it current quickly, the file may still be workable. Underwriting will want a letter of explanation, proof the account is current, and possibly evidence that she has been making the payments herself." What happens if she doesn't? The full monthly payment may be counted against you. And if it falls further behind, we have a much bigger problem. I wrote everything down. 30 days late. Proof of payment. Letter of explanation. Writing gave my hands a job while the rest of me tried not to imagine Lauren driving that polished SUV past the blue house on Sycamore while my mortgage application collapsed beneath it. Dana waited until I finished. The second item is different. She enlarged another line on the report. A Visa account ending in 4417. Opened 4 years earlier. Balance $9.400. Mailing address 1414 Brookfield Road. My parents' house. Contact number. Their landline. The same number I had memorized in elementary school. The account was opened the same month my father came home from bypass surgery. The payment history was perfect. No missed payments. No collections. No obvious alarm until the balance climbed high enough to affect my debt-to-income ratio. I don't have a Visa, I said. Dana looked at me carefully. Not one you forgot about? A store conversion? A balance transfer? Anything like that? No. My own voice sounded far away. For years, I had checked the free credit score inside my banking app. The number moved a few points up or down, and I treated that as proof that everything was fine. I had never pulled the full reports because I had never missed a payment, never carried much debt, and never imagined someone else could be paying an account in my name. I had confused responsible behavior with complete information. Dana printed the relevant pages. A credit report won't show us where the card was used, she said. It only shows the account, balance, limit, addresses, and payment history. You'll need the issuer for transaction records. From her office, I called the number listed for the bank. The first representative transferred me to fraud. The second asked questions about addresses I had lived at, old loans, my social security number, and the approximate amount of my car insurance. When I explained that I had never opened the account, the woman's tone changed from routine to precise. She froze the card immediately. No replacement card will be issued, she said. We're opening an identity theft investigation. I'm also removing online access until we verify ownership. I gave her my actual address and email. She told me the account had been enrolled in paperless statements from the beginning. The email attached to it was a string of letters and numbers I had never seen. The recovery phone number belonged to my parents. The bank could place the 3 most recent statements in a secure portal after additional verification. Older records and the original application would require a written request. By the time I left Dana's office, the pharmacy downstairs had turned off half its lights. At home, Eli was asleep on Alina's couch across the hall. I carried him to bed, then opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The statements appeared just after midnight. I began reading from the top, one transaction at a time. On the second page, I found a charge dated 3 days before my parents' anniversary. The Briar House, event deposit, $600. I read the line 3 times. The amount was not the final restaurant bill. It was the deposit required to hold the private dining section and confirm the pre-ordered meals. Lauren had reminded everyone about that policy in the family texts. She had treated it like proof of her competence. My name had paid for the reservation. The next morning, I called the Briar House before the lunch rush. I asked for the events manager and gave her the date, amount, transaction code, and last 4 digits of the card. There was a pause while she searched. Yes, she said, that was the deposit for the Whitaker anniversary party. The reservation contact was Lauren Hayes. I thanked her and hung up before my voice changed. At the anniversary dinner, my mother had asked me to help cover the remaining bill because my father was retired. Scott had sighed over the prices. Lauren had pushed a bread basket toward Eli as though feeding him would have been an unreasonable extra. But $600 had already been charged to a card wearing my name. They had used my credit to create the appearance that my parents were hosting. Then they expected me to pay again. And the only person they had failed to feed was my son. I printed the statement and placed it beside the permission slip Eli had hidden. Together, the 2 pages said more than either one could alone. The other transactions made the situation harder, not easier. There were charges at a neighborhood pharmacy, a grocery store, and a gas station near Lauren's house. There was Judy's hair salon every 5 weeks, as regular as a utility bill. There was an electronics store purchase for nearly $800 and several meals at restaurants my parents could not have afforded on their stated budget. Some expenses were necessities. That would become my mother's defense. That distinction mattered because Judy had always built her defenses from partial truths. She would point to the prescription bottle and ask who could object, hoping no one looked at the signature beneath the purchase or the hidden account. But medicine purchased with a stolen name was still purchased with a stolen name. I opened a spreadsheet and created columns for the date, merchant, amount, likely user, and supporting document. It was not revenge. It was the same thing I did at work when a child's condition changed: establish what was true before deciding what it meant. By noon, I had enough to drive to Brookfield Road. My mother let me into the kitchen without asking why I was there. She was arranging church donation envelopes in neat stacks. My father stood at the sink rinsing a coffee cup. I placed the printed credit report and statements on the table. Do you know about this card? Judy barely looked at the first page. You agreed to that when your father was in the hospital. No, I didn't. You were exhausted. You may not remember every conversation. For one dangerous second, I searched my memory. The hospital chair, the fluorescent hallway, my mother pressing forms toward me while my father slept. Then I looked at the fake email address, the paperless statements, and the recovery number. If I agreed, why was everything hidden from me? Her mouth tightened. It wasn't hidden. It was managed. I showed her the Briar House deposit. You used it for the anniversary dinner. I used it for the family. And then you asked me to pay the bill. You have a good job, Mara. She said it as if employment were consent. I told her the card had been frozen and the balance had to be moved out of my name. That was when the careful denial fell away. No one else in this family has credit like yours, she said. I put it where it could do the most good. Behind her, my father kept drying the same cup. I looked at him. Did you know? He did not answer. After a long silence, he set the cup down. Meet me in the garage tomorrow, he said. My father's garage had always felt like the safest room in my parents' house. When I was 12, he taught me to change a tire there. When I was 16, he let me hide behind the workbench after my mother found out I had skipped a church luncheon. The garage smelled of motor oil, sawdust, and the peppermint gum he kept in the top drawer. The next afternoon, he was polishing a wrench that did not need polishing. Did you know about the card? I asked. He kept his eyes on the metal. Your mother said you agreed. That wasn't my question. His hand stopped. Yes. The word was quiet enough to disappear beneath the hum of the old refrigerator. He told me Judy had opened the account when he came home from surgery. She said the family needed a temporary cushion and that I had given permission at the hospital. He had never asked me directly because asking would have created an argument. And my father had spent most of his adult life treating conflict like a fire that could be starved of oxygen. Then he told me there had been a second card. My mother had added Lauren as an authorized user so she could buy gas for the SUV. I stared at him. The loan with my name on it? She has 2 children, Mara. We couldn't let her get stranded. The car was 30 days late. Still moving through Ashford on fuel purchased with an account opened in my name. My father had known both facts and somehow arranged them into a story where Lauren was the person being protected. Please don't make this bigger, he said. My heart can't handle another family crisis. For years, that sentence would have worked. I would have heard the fear beneath it and volunteered to carry whatever caused it. This time I heard something else. My father was asking me to purchase his peace with my future. Dana confirmed the practical choices later that afternoon. I could dispute the visa, file an identity theft report, and provide documentation to underwriting. The bank might temporarily remove the balance from its calculation while the investigation continued. The auto loan was different. I can't make your co-signature disappear, she said. Lauren needs to bring it current immediately. Ideally, She and Scott sell or trade the SUV and replace it with something they can afford. Until then, the debt remains your legal problem too. I asked what would happen if I named my mother in a report. Dana did not pretend to know. Start with identitytheft.gov and the issuer's fraud process. A local police report may strengthen the file, but no one should promise you what a prosecutor will or won't do. Before taking that road, I asked my family to meet. I brought a written plan to my parents' dining room. My parents would assume responsibility for the visa balance. Lauren and Scott would bring the SUV current, then refinance, sell, or trade it. Everyone would sign written acknowledgments. If they acted promptly and honestly, I would wait before deciding whether to make a police report. It was not forgiveness. It was an exit ramp. Scott read the page and leaned back. Selling now would be financially irresponsible. The payment is already late. 30 days isn't a catastrophe. It is when the late payment is on my credit. Lauren began crying. Her tears were real, they were simply aimed inward. You want us to lose the only safe car we have? Judy let everyone speak before folding her hands. People in this family do not sign papers against one another. I looked at the table. My signature was on Lauren's loan. My name was on the visa. My bank statements showed $400 leaving every month. The family had never objected to paperwork when the paperwork obligated me. They objected only when it protected me. I gathered my copies. As I reached the front door, my father followed me into the hall. He kept his voice low enough that my mother could pretend not to hear. The SUV file is in the second drawer of my desk. He said, your missing copy should be there. You still have a key. He did not offer to retrieve it himself and looked suddenly old. But for the first time, he had pointed me towards something my mother did not want me to see. On Sunday morning, my parents were at church. I used the key they had given me years earlier for emergencies. The irony followed me through the front door. My father's study had not changed since I was a teenager. The same oak desk faced the window. The same jar of sharpened pencils sat beside a brass lamp. Every folder in the filing cabinet had a typed label and squared edges. The SUV documents were in the second drawer. My copy of the payoff terms sat behind the original contract, exactly where my father said it would be. I should have taken the pages and left. Instead, when I lifted the folder, I saw a strip of green fabric beneath it. The book was flat against the bottom of the drawer, hidden under the hanging files. Its cloth cover had faded at the corners. A piece of masking tape crossed the front. Household, my mother had written in block letters. I opened it. The first page bearing my name was dated the year I turned 12. Braces, $3.200. Summer camp, $450. Homecoming dress, $165. Driving lessons, $280. Gas for community college, $35 weekly. A narrow column beside the totals was labeled 5%. My mother had charged interest on my childhood before I was old enough to sign a contract. The entries were not limited to money. Missed Thanksgiving dinner, obligation outstanding. Watched Lauren for 8 weeks, partial credit. Declined church fundraiser, gratitude not demonstrated. Paid family restaurant bill, applied to interest. The ledger did not merely track what I received. It measured obedience. The ink changed over the years, fading from blue to black. But the handwriting remained exact. Every total was double underlined. Every gift to Lauren carried a small star. Every entry beside my name ended with a balance that moved forward again. I turned pages slowly. The wages from my first job at Miller's Pharmacy were listed as payments. My mother had told me she was depositing them into savings for college. Summer afternoons spent caring for Lauren appeared as deductions. Every favor I had thought was part of being a daughter had been entered as labor against a balance I had never agreed to owe. There was no page marked paid in full. That was the design. A debt that ended could no longer control the debtor. Lauren's section began several tabs later. Cheer camp, gift. Wedding dress, gift. Apartment deposit, gift. Childcare for Molly and Ben. Gift. The SUV down payment. Gift. For a moment, jealousy rose in me, hot, childish, and embarrassing. Then I understood that Lauren had not escaped the system. She had been assigned a different role inside it. I was expected to produce stability. Lauren was expected to produce the bright photographs my mother displayed at church. Then I reached the newest pages. At the top of one, my mother had written a single letter. E. School shoes, $68. Birthday bicycle, $210. 2 afternoons after school, $50. Christmas telescope fund, $75. Church day camp, $120. Beside the last entry was a note. Needs to learn gratitude earlier than his mother did. My son was 8 years old. The shoes he wore until the soles softened. The red bicycle he slept beside the first night because he was afraid it might disappear. The money my parents had offered toward a telescope he did not yet own. None of it had been given freely. An account had already been opened for him, not at a bank, but in my mother's mind. Suddenly the anniversary dinner made sense. The empty plate had not been forgetfulness. It had been instruction. Children like Molly and Ben were displayed as proof of family success. Eli was being trained to understand that belonging came with a balance. I took out my phone. I photographed the cover, every page bearing my name, Lauren's section, and the page marked E. I included the drawer, the folder placement, and my mother's handwriting. Then I uploaded the images to a new cloud account and emailed copies to an address only I controlled. I returned the ledger exactly as I found it. Outside, I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel. I had spent 23 years trying to repay a debt that was never meant to close. That evening, I called June Parker, my mother's older cousin. What was my mother like when she was young? I asked. June was silent for so long I heard her television click off. Then she said, "You found the book, didn't you?" June did not ask what I had seen. She began with a kitchen window. When my mother was 16, she worked evenings at a diner off Route 35. Every Friday, Evelyn, my grandmother, sat at the kitchen table while Judy counted her tips. Half went into a glass jar with a wire clasp on the windowsill. Evelyn called it rent. Judy's younger brother paid nothing. When he turned 18, Evelyn bought him a used Chevrolet with cash. Judy stood at the sink washing dishes while he leaned on the horn in the driveway. She never forgot that sound. June said. The payments continued after Judy moved out. She brought envelopes on Sundays, mailed checks after she married, and sent money even when she and my father were struggling. On her wedding night, still wearing her going-away dress, she asked Frank to drive past Evelyn's house so she could put that week's envelope in the jar. She paid until Evelyn died. June said, nearly 40 years. June said Evelyn never thanked her and never explained where the money went. Judy learned being a good daughter meant surrendering whatever she had before anyone needed to ask. Her brother's freedom was treated as natural, her sacrifice was treated as character. By the time she became a mother, she had spent decades mistaking endurance for virtue and payment for love. June's voice softened, but she did not excuse her. Your mother inherited that arithmetic, she said. What she did with it afterward was her choice. I pictured my mother at 16, smelling of fryer grease, surrendering half of everything she had earned while her brother drove away in a car she had helped purchase. For a moment, I saw her without the ledger. I remembered the winter she stayed awake beside my bed while pneumonia made every breath hurt. I remembered her hemming a school costume after midnight and bringing the exact lemon cake I liked to the hospital on my birthday. When Eli was born, she was the first person to arrive and the last to leave. Her love had not been imaginary. But somewhere along the way, she had confused loving people with owning a portion of them. Did she ever talk about the jar? I asked. No, she washed it after Evelyn's funeral and put it in a cabinet. June paused. Understanding where a wound came from doesn't mean you let it keep bleeding through your child. After we hung up, I found Eli at the kitchen table erasing a hole through his math worksheet. I placed the field trip form beside him. Why did you hide this? His shoulders rose. I thought we were saving money because of the steak. $28. That was what he had decided he should remove from his own life to repair the cost of being fed. I sat across from him. Do you remember the shoes Grandma bought you last fall? He nodded. Do I have to give those back too? The question landed with the quiet force of the empty plate. No, I took his hands. You do not have to pay anyone to sit at my table. Not with money, not by being extra good, and not by pretending you don't need anything. He studied my face. What if Grandma thinks I do? Then Grandma is wrong. The words hurt. They were still true. The next morning, before my shift, I opened my laptop and did 3 things. I canceled the $400 transfer that had left my account every month for 4 years. I placed credit freezes with all 3 bureaus so no new account could be opened under my name. Dana had explained that I could temporarily lift them when underwriting needed its final credit check. Then I completed the identity theft report and submitted the formal dispute to the card issuer. I uploaded my identification, proof of address, the credit report, and the statements I had received. The process did not feel dramatic. It was boxes, dates, passwords, and confirmation numbers. But by the time I closed the laptop, the machinery had changed direction. 3 days later, the bank mailed its dispute notice to the address listed on the Visa account. Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my mother holding a white envelope that had already been opened. I opened the door but left the chain fastened. My mother held the bank's envelope between 2 fingers. You reported your own mother. I reported an account I never opened. Let me in, Mara. No. The word surprised both of us. Behind me, Eli was looking for his swim goggles. I told Judy we were late for his lesson. You are tearing this family apart over paperwork. I looked at the envelope. The paperwork already had my name on it. Then I closed the door. Judy's response did not arrive as one explosion. It came through ordinary disruptions. Our pastor called and said my mother was worried stress had affected my memory. An aunt appeared at St. Anne's with banana bread and a speech about forgiveness. Judy mailed Eli a card addressed only to him, as if I were an obstacle between a grandmother and her grandson. 2 cousins stopped answering my messages. A church friend I had known since childhood looked past me at the grocery store. None of them asked to see the statements. Judy had offered them a simpler story. An exhausted single mother had misunderstood a family arrangement. Simplicity travels faster than evidence, especially when it protects the person everyone has already decided is respectable. Then she cancelled childcare. I learned at 5:30 in the evening, 90 minutes before my shift. Her text said she no longer felt emotionally safe entering my apartment. I called 6 sitters. Elena finally found a college student from her building who could stay overnight. But the rate was almost twice what I normally paid. By the end of that week, emergency childcare had consumed money I had set aside for the Sycamore house. Boundaries had a price. The difference was that this time I knew what I was buying. At the hospital, the family pressure became harder to keep outside my work. During morning rounds, the nurses' station received a call from a collections agency about Lauren's SUV. She had listed my work number as a reference on the loan paperwork. A unit clerk handed me the message while a physician waited for my respiratory assessment. Heat climbed my neck. My family had reached the one place where competence had always protected me. During break, I called the agency from an empty conference room. I explained that my employer prohibited collection calls and required all future contact in writing. I repeated the request, wrote down the representative's name, and asked for a confirmation number. Procedure was not the same as safety, but it gave fear edges. When I hung up, Elena was waiting outside with 2 coffees. She had retired from hospital social work 3 years earlier and still had the habit of asking questions no one else wanted to answer. Do you want me to listen? She asked. Or help you make a plan? Both. We sat in the courtyard while I told her everything, the restaurant, the visa, my father's silence, the green ledger, and the page marked E. Elena did not interrupt. When I finished, she asked whether I had eaten since the night before. I had not. She handed me half her sandwich without making it symbolic. My phone rang before I finished it. Dana did not waste time. The issuer has provisionally accepted the dispute, she said. That keeps the visa from automatically killing the application. But underwriting needs a complete file within 10 business days. The list included a notarized affidavit, the identity theft report, documentation from the card issuer, proof of my correct address, and evidence that the auto loan had been brought current. A local police report might also be required before the underwriter would exclude the disputed balance. If we don't have it, Dana said, the debt stays in your ratios, and the seller has a backup offer. The Blue House was no longer a distant dream. It was a door being held open for 10 days. After the call, Elena watched me fold the paper list into smaller and smaller squares. If a patient told you a relative had used her name, her money, and her child to keep her obedient, she said, what would you call it? I wanted a softer word. None came. Abuse. Elena nodded. Then don't rename it just because the person doing it is your mother. Detective Marcus Bell worked from a windowless office in the Ashford Police Department. Beneath fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired. He read the identity theft report, the credit pages, and the 3 statements from the Visa account. He did not react when he reached the Briar House deposit. I can take a report, he said, but I want you to understand what that means and what it doesn't. It means my mother gets arrested. Not automatically. He explained that filing a report created a record. The bank could use it. The credit bureaus could use it. His department could refer the matter to the county prosecutor. But he could not promise whether charges would be filed, delayed, or resolved through restitution. You don't control every consequence after you tell the truth, he said. Your job is to tell us what you know without guessing and without hiding anything. He asked whether anyone else had access to my social security number, date of birth, or old tax returns. I told him my mother had kept copies of school forms, insurance documents, and the paperwork from my father's surgery. Marcus wrote each answer without judgment. That made the room feel more serious than anger would have. Family cases are difficult because people keep protecting the person who hurt them, he said. They leave out names, soften timelines, or call crimes misunderstandings. Then the records no longer match. I knew exactly how easily I could do that. I had been translating my mother's choices into gentler language for years. That was the part one feared more than anything else. If I named Judy, my father might lose the house. My mother might be charged. Eli might decide the empty plate had caused his grandparents to disappear. People at church would tell themselves I had chosen a mortgage over my family. Marcus slid the unfinished form back to me. You can take a little time. Dana said you have 10 business days. Just don't confuse delaying a decision with avoiding one. I left without signing. 2 nights later, Lauren texted while I was helping a nurse reposition a child on a ventilator. Dad's in the chest pain. Hope you're satisfied. I left Eli with Elena and drove to St. Anne's. Frank's EKG was normal. His blood work showed no heart damage. The emergency physician suspected anxiety and reflux, but they kept him for observation because of his history. I stayed beside his bed after Judy and Lauren went for coffee. Love did not disappear just because trust had. Around 2 in the morning, Frank woke and reached for my wrist. Your mother took an envelope to Evelyn every Friday, he said, even the night we got married. He told me about the glass jar. After Evelyn died, Judy washed it, dried it, and placed it in a kitchen cabinet like something sacred. I thought if I kept the peace, I was protecting everyone, he said, but my peace was paid for with your life. The admission hurt more than another excuse would have. It was too late, but it was true. Outside the room, Judy waited beneath the exit sign. She spoke calmly, as though reciting terms already approved. I would withdraw the dispute. I would accept the visa as a family obligation. I would resume the monthly transfer. On Saturday, I would attend Frank's birthday dinner at the Briar House, and none of this would be discussed again. If you keep going, she said, Eli will lose his grandparents. That will be your choice. For the first time, I asked what the family owed me. She looked genuinely confused. I paid my mother until the day she died. She said, I never complained. Now it is your turn. Not an injustice, a shift change. I returned home near dawn. The affidavit lay where I had left it on the kitchen table. I picked up a pen. Then set it down. Eli stood in the doorway in dinosaur pajamas, holding the stuffed triceratops he carried when something felt too large. Are Grandma and Grandpa mad because of me? He asked. Because I ate the steak? I pulled out the chair beside me. This did not happen because you ate dinner, I said. Eli climbed onto the seat, still holding the triceratops against his chest. Then why is Grandma mad? Because I stopped letting her use something that belongs to me. He looked toward the affidavit. My name? My name, my money, and my choices. I told him the adults were responsible for what happened next. He did not have to fix the family by eating less, asking for less, or returning gifts. What about the book? He asked. Why did she write my stuff down? I had not told him every detail. But children build bridges from fragments. Because Grandma never learned that loving someone is different from owning them. He considered that. Is she bad? I thought of the lemon cake, the hospital nights, and the jar on Evelyn's windowsill. She has done something wrong, I said, and she is responsible for making it right. The next morning, Elena drove me to a shipping store with a notary desk. I read the affidavit twice before signing my full legal name. Before we left, the notary asked whether I understood that the affidavit was sworn under penalty of perjury. I said yes. The question steadied me. My family had spent years treating truth as negotiable, something that changed according to who needed protection. Here, the words meant exactly what they said. The stamp came down with an ordinary click. Nothing outside changed. Cars moved through the parking lot. A man carried padded envelopes to his truck. But the name my family had spent was finally being used to defend its owner. Elena offered to stay with Eli during my next overnight shift. How much do I owe you? I asked automatically. When I need help, I'll ask, she said. Today there's no bill. The words made me more uncomfortable than signing the affidavit. Thank you, I said. That afternoon, I sent Lauren and Scott a certified letter. They had 7 days to bring the SUV loan current and provide proof of payment. If they failed, I would notify the lender that the primary borrowers were in default and cooperate with any collection or repossession process. I would not send another payment or protect the vehicle from consequences. Scott called it a threat. It's a boundary, I said. Lauren said they did not have the money. Then my father did the first thing that cost him something. Frank withdrew money from a small retirement account Judy did not manage. He paid the overdue amount and required Lauren and Scott to meet him at a dealership. They traded the SUV for an older minivan with a lower payment. My name did not vanish from the original history, but the account was current and the remaining balance was reduced. Frank's payment did not make him innocent, and it did not buy forgiveness. It showed only that he could act when silence finally became more expensive than honesty. I saved every document in a folder Dana had labeled fraud support. Then backed it up online. I was finished trusting memory where records were possible, including the envelope and Frank's signed statement. Frank emailed the receipt to Dana. He also mailed me an envelope. Inside was an unopened replacement card bearing my name, addressed to my parents' house. Beneath it was a photocopy of the authorized user request for Lauren and a handwritten statement from Frank confirming that I had never received, activated, or used the account. His note contained one sentence. I should have told the truth before you had to prove it. Dana accepted the documents but refused to offer false comfort. The 30-day late payment remains, she said. Underwriting will see it. We'll submit the explanation, proof the account is current, and evidence Lauren made the prior payments. The file is still alive, but it is not approved. The seller of the Sycamore house had accepted a backup offer. If my financing failed or the deadline passed, the house could go to someone else. The blue bedroom with the east-facing window was still possible. Possible was not the same as safe. Friday afternoon, a cream envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was an invitation to Frank's birthday dinner at the Breyer house. At the bottom, in Judy's handwriting, were 8 words. "We will settle this properly. As a family." The Breyer house had placed us at the same long table beside the fireplace. For one moment, I wondered whether my mother had chosen it deliberately or simply could not imagine surrendering a room where she had once controlled the story. This time, Eli's place was prepared before we arrived. A children's menu rested beside a cup of crayons. Lauren remembered that he liked his steak medium and asked whether he wanted fries or mashed potatoes. Judy kissed the top of his head and told him how handsome he looked. No one mentioned the empty plate. Their kindness made me more uneasy than open hostility would have. They had always known how to make a child feel welcome. That meant they had also known what they were doing when they chose not to. Frank looked tired but genuinely pleased to see Eli. He opened the handmade birthday card twice and kept it beside his plate. Scott talked about the older minivan as if trading the SUV had been his own prudent decision. Lauren avoided looking at me. Dinner remained almost normal until dessert. Eli ate without asking what anything cost. I watched him choose a second roll, then hesitate before taking it. I moved the basket closer without comment. Across the table, Judy noticed the gesture. Her expression tightened, as though even that permission belonged to her. Then Judy placed a cream-colored envelope beside my coffee. "I had this prepared so we can put the ugliness behind us." The first page was titled Family Reconciliation Agreement. The language was careful. It referred to healing, privacy, and the emotional well-being of the children. It said nothing about identity theft. Under the agreement, I would withdraw the visa dispute, stop providing information to investigators, and recognize the balance as a shared family obligation. I would resume monthly support at $500. No one would discuss the green ledger, the credit card, or related accusations in front of relatives or children. The final section promised that Eli would be restored to full participation in family holidays and grandparent relationships. My mother had turned access to my son's family into consideration in a contract. "This protects everyone," she said, "especially Eli." Lauren placed a pen beside the papers. "Just sign it, Mara. We can be normal again." Eli leaned toward me. "If you sign, do I get to see Grandma and Grandpa?" His voice was not accusing. That made the question worse. The table went quiet. All the polished language collapsed into its actual meaning. A child had been offered belonging in exchange for his mother's obedience. Judy reached for his hand. "That isn't what this means." "Then why is it in the paper?" he asked. Frank pushed his chair back. "For most of my life, that sound had meant he was leaving before an argument began. Instead, he walked to the coat rack near the private room entrance. From inside his old canvas jacket, he removed the green ledger." Judy's face changed. "What are you doing?" He set the book in the center of the table. "You moved it after the bank letter," he said. "I found it in the linen closet." Lauren stared at the faded cover. Frank placed one hand on it, not possessively but as if holding down something dangerous. Mara did not invent this. She did not agree to it. And I knew enough to stop it long before now. Judy looked at him with a kind of disbelief that was almost grief. "You went through my things?" "They were never only your things." It was not a heroic speech. His voice shook. He did not look at me afterward. Perhaps because he knew one truthful act could not erase decades of silence. But he had finally spoken where my mother could hear him. Scott shifted in his chair. Lauren whispered that the children should not be present, though she had been willing to let Eli watch me sign away my name. I touched the agreement. The paper was thick, expensive, and completely without legal letterhead. It was not a settlement. It was a performance of one, designed to make surrender feel responsible. Judy turned back to me. "Your father is upset. You are upset. We have all made mistakes. Sign it, and we can stop hurting one another." I looked at the ledger. Then at the woman who had once sat awake through my fever and later entered a price beside my son's shoes. "I know about the jar," I said. My mother's fingers tightened around her napkin. "What jar?" The one on Evelyn's windowsill. The one you filled with half your wages when you were 16. The one she used while your brother received a car. Judy looked toward Frank, then June's empty place as if searching for the person who had betrayed her. I told her what I knew. The Friday envelopes. The drive past Evelyn's house on her wedding night. The payments that continued until the funeral. For the first time that evening, my mother had no prepared response. I understand where you learned this, I said. I understand why giving money began to feel like proof of love. Her eyes filled, but her voice remained hard. You have no idea what I gave up. You're right, I don't. I thought of the 16-year-old girl counting diner tips beneath her mother's gaze. I could feel compassion for that girl without handing her my son. But I will not teach it to Eli. Judy's grief closed like a door. So this is your answer? After everything I did for you? She began listing the evidence of her motherhood, the braces, the school clothes, the nights beside my sickbed, the childcare when I worked, the meals she had cooked, the birthdays she had remembered. I did not deny any of it. For a moment, I remembered her hands cooling my forehead with a washcloth, her coat wrapped around me after late school rehearsals, and the lemon cake she brought to the hospital every birthday. I did not need to erase those memories to protect myself. That was the difference between us. My mother believed one truth had to cancel another. If she had loved me, she could not have harmed me if I named the harm. I must be denying the love. But both things could exist. The love was real, so was the damage. Recognizing one did not require me to surrender the other. Or my son. Again. Those things may have been love when you gave them, I said, but you cannot turn them into ownership afterward. I explained that the affidavit had been signed. I would complete the police report and continue cooperating with the card issuer. I was not asking for anyone to be arrested. And I could not promise that no charges would follow. That decision belonged to the bank, the investigators, and the prosecutor. The balance comes off my name, I said. What happens after that is between the bank and the person who opened the account. Judy looked around the table for support. Scott studied his plate. Lauren's eyes remained fixed on the ledger. Frank did not move his hand from the cover. My mother pushed the agreement toward me again. You are choosing paperwork over your family. No, I am choosing truth over a family that requires me to lie. I tore off the final page containing the signature line. I did not destroy the rest. I folded the unsigned pages once and placed them beside the bread basket. Then I asked the server for separate checks. I paid for Eli and myself, added a generous tip, and stood. The ledger stops here. Eli put on his coat. He walked around the table and hugged Frank, who held him too tightly. Judy remained seated. Her face carried anger, sorrow, and disbelief, but no apology. There was no applause. No one admitted I was right. Healing rarely announces itself that clearly. Outside, the parking lot was silver with frost. Frank followed us without his coat. I'll tell the bank the truth, he said, and the police, if they ask. I won't say you agreed again. I wanted those words to repair something. They did not. You should have done that years ago. I know. He did not ask me to forgive him. That was the first mercy he offered without attaching a request. On Monday morning, I returned to Marcus Bell's office. He reviewed the affidavit, the statements, Frank's written confirmation, and the photographs of the ledger. Then he turned the completed report toward me. I signed my name. This time, my hand did not shake. The police report did not produce sirens, handcuffs, or a dramatic knock at my parents' door. It produced more paperwork. The card issuer sent me a letter confirming that the $9,400 balance had been provisionally removed from my responsibility while the investigation continued. The company notified the credit bureaus that the account was disputed as identity theft and requested updated reporting. Its fraud department also contacted my mother. Judy hired an attorney. Detective Bell told me the county prosecutor was reviewing the file, but no decision had been made. He reminded me that restitution, deferred action, and criminal charges were all possibilities. I had told the truth. The next steps no longer belonged entirely to me. Through her attorney, Judy eventually agreed to repay the issuer under a formal restitution arrangement. The agreement did not declare her innocent or turn the account into a family misunderstanding. It simply created a path for the money to be recovered while the legal review continued. Her attorney requested that all communication pass through his office. For the first time in my life, my mother could not reach me by calling until I surrendered. That should have felt like victory. Instead, I mostly felt tired. Dana kept the mortgage file moving, but she asked for documents faster than I could name them: an updated credit report, proof that the auto loan was current, a written explanation of the late payment, confirmation that the disputed visa was excluded, and bank statements showing that my down payment had not been borrowed. The money I had spent on emergency childcare and legal consultations reduced my reserves. Underwriting questioned whether I would have enough left after closing. I canceled a furniture order, delayed replacing my car's tires, and moved every remaining dollar into the account Dana had instructed me not to touch. The seller of the Sycamore house agreed to extend the financing deadline by 7 days. The backup offer remained in place. For those 7 days, the house seemed to belong to someone else each morning. I temporarily lifted all 3 credit freezes for 48 hours so the lender could complete its final check. Then I waited. Dana called twice for additional documents and once to confirm that Lauren, not I, had made the earlier SUV payments. Frank supplied copies of cancelled checks. Lauren signed a statement only after Dana explained that refusing could affect the lender's treatment of the entire debt. On the 6th afternoon, I was replacing a nebulizer mask on a frightened 4-year-old when my phone vibrated in my pocket. Dana had left a voicemail. "You're clear to close." I listened to it 3 times in an empty supply room. There was no music, no one applauded. I leaned against a cabinet and covered my mouth while relief moved through me slowly. Almost painfully, the blue bedroom, the east-facing window, and the old maple in the backyard had survived the truth. That evening, Lauren called. She did not ask about the house. "Mom says I have to start contributing," she said. Judy had reopened the green ledger. The word gift beside Lauren's wedding dress had been crossed out. The apartment deposit, childcare for Molly and Ben, and part of the SUV down payment had been totaled again. Judy said that because I had abandoned my responsibilities, Lauren would now carry the family. She said, "There's a page for me." Lauren whispered, "Is that true?" I sent her one photograph. The image showed her name, the old entries, and the fresh word written beside them. Ode. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Lauren had believed she was loved differently. In that moment, she understood that she had only been billed later. "Can you help me?" she asked. I knew what she meant. She wanted money, a plan, and someone else to absorb the first consequences. "When you're ready to tell the truth without asking me to pay it for you," I said, "I'll help you find a way out." 3 weeks later, a title company employee slid 2 brass keys across a conference table. This time, the signature beneath them was mine. And no one could invoice it. Moving day began with rain and too many people carrying boxes through the narrow front door. Elena arrived first with coffee. 2 nurses from St. Anne's brought a borrowed truck. Dana came wearing jeans and carrying a toolbox she admitted she knew how to use. Every time someone lifted something heavy, I felt the old words rise automatically. "I'll pay you back." I swallowed them. "Thank you," I said instead. The phrase felt incomplete without a promise attached to it. No one seemed to notice anything missing. Eli's room was the first one we finished. His bed fit beneath the east-facing window exactly as he had imagined. Elena hung dark blue curtains while Eli positioned a second-hand telescope beside the glass. We placed glow-in-the-dark stars across the ceiling, unevenly, because real constellations were more difficult than the package suggested. Morning light filled the room before we were done. No one wrote down the cost of the curtains, the bed frame, the pizza, or the hours spent carrying boxes. Help arrived, did its work, and remained a gift. Frank came the following Saturday. He arrived alone and stood on the porch until I invited him inside. He had not seen Judy since breakfast. He said, and the apology hidden inside that fact was not enough. Still, he had come. He walked through the small house slowly. In Eli's room, he admired the telescope and asked which planet they would look for first. Saturn, Eli said. Frank removed a $20 bill from his wallet. Don't tell. He stopped. Years of secrecy passed across his face. This is a gift, he said. You don't have to hide it from Grandma, and you don't have to give me anything back. Eli looked at me before accepting it. I nodded. Forgiveness did not enter the room with my father. Neither did trust. But for the first time, he had offered something without requiring silence. I let him stay for coffee. A week later, I bought a cloth-bound notebook the same shade of green as Judy's ledger. When Eli saw it on the kitchen table, his expression changed. Is that like Grandma's book? No. I opened it so he could see. On the first page, I wrote the date he first saw Saturn through the telescope. On the next, I recorded the afternoon he learned to ride his bicycle without training wheels. I added his current height, his favorite dinosaur, and the joke he repeated until neither of us could remember why it was funny. There were no columns for interest, gratitude, or repayment. This book is for things I don't want to forget, I told him. He considered that, then added a drawing of Saturn with rings too large for the planet. Some losses remained. Judy did not call. Eli missed her and sometimes became angry with me because missing a person is easier when someone else can be blamed. Lauren had not yet decided whether she wanted freedom more than rescue. Frank visited only when he could gather enough courage to disappoint his wife. The new house did not heal any of us by itself. It gave us a place to practice. On Saturday mornings, Eli and I walked to a diner near Sycamore Street. The third week, he ordered pancakes with whipped cream and a hot chocolate before I opened my menu. He did not ask the price. A server placed a basket of warm rolls between us. Eli took one, added butter, and pushed the basket toward me. This time, bread was not the meal given to the child who mattered least. It was simply something shared. We walked home beneath the old maple, toward the pale blue house and the east window shining above the porch. I could not change the way love had reached me. But I could decide what shape it took when it passed through me to my son.